The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine gardens of Kensington Palace, as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood by the tall windows of her private sitting room. Her fingers traced the edge of a delicate china teacup, steam rising gently from the Earl Grey tea within. The palace had been unusually quiet these past few weeks, with only the soft footsteps of trusted staff echoing through the corridors. Prince William entered the room with his characteristic gentle smile, though Catherine could detect something different in his eyes today. There was an excitement there, a spark that she had not seen in months. He approached her slowly, placing his hands on her shoulders with the tender care that had marked their relationship for over 2 decades. "Good morning, my love," he whispered, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. Catherine turned to face him, her own eyes bright with curiosity. Something was definitely different about this morning, and she could sense that whatever news William carried would change everything. The couple had been through so much together recently. The challenges of royal duties, the constant public scrutiny, and the weight of their responsibilities had sometimes felt overwhelming. Yet here they stood, stronger than ever, ready to face whatever the day might bring. William took her hands in his touch warm and reassuring. "Catherine, I have something wonderful to share with you," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "Something that will bring joy not just to us but to everyone who loves our family." The princess felt her heart begin to race. She had learned to read her husband's expressions over the years, and this particular look meant only one thing. Big news was coming, news that would soon ripple far beyond the walls of their private residence. Outside, the palace staff continued their morning routines, unaware that this day would soon become one of the most memorable in recent royal history. The head of communications was already preparing for what would become one of the most joyful announcements Kensington Palace had made in years. Catherine squeezed William's hands, encouraging him to continue. The anticipation in the room was almost tangible, and she could barely contain her excitement about what her husband was about to reveal. "Tell me," she said softly, her voice filled with love and trust. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together just as we always have." William's smile grew wider, and for a moment he looked exactly like the young man she had fallen in love with all those years ago at university. The weight of the crown seemed to lift from his shoulders as he prepared to share news that would bring happiness to millions around the world. The morning light continued to filter through the windows, casting everything in a golden glow that seemed almost magical. It was as if the universe itself was preparing for the wonderful announcement that was about to unfold within these historic walls. As Catherine waited for her husband to speak, she reflected on their incredible journey together. From university sweethearts to the future king and queen consort, they had weathered every storm hand in hand. Today felt like the beginning of another beautiful chapter in their love story. The silence stretched for just a moment longer before William took a deep breath, ready to share the news that would make headlines around the world and bring smiles to faces across the Commonwealth and beyond. William's eyes sparkled with pure joy as he finally found his voice. "Catherine, my darling, we're going to have another baby." The words hung in the air like music, sweet and perfect. Catherine's teacup slipped from her fingers, but William caught it with the quick reflexes that had served him well in his RAF days. Tears of happiness immediately filled Catherine's eyes as she processed the incredible news. After everything they had been through, after all the challenges and public pressures, this blessing felt like a gift from heaven itself. She threw her arms around William's neck, pulling him close as laughter and tears mixed together in pure emotion. "Are you certain?" she whispered against his ear, though her heart already knew the answer. The morning sickness that had been plaguing her for the past week suddenly made perfect sense. The unusual fatigue, the strange food cravings, the emotional sensitivity to the children's bedtime stories, it all clicked into place like pieces of a beautiful puzzle. William nodded, his own eyes now glistening with unshed tears. "Dr. Harrison confirmed it yesterday during your private appointment. I wanted to be the one to tell you properly, in our own time, in our own space." He cupped her face gently in his hands, studying every detail of her expression as if memorizing this perfect moment. Catherine laughed through her tears, the sound filling the sitting room with warmth. "I had wondered why I felt so tired lately, and why the smell of George's favorite breakfast made me feel queasy." She placed her hand over her still flat stomach, imagining the tiny life growing within. Our fourth little one. The couple stood there in their private moment, holding each other and marveling at the miracle of new life. Outside their window, the palace garden seemed to glow with extra beauty, as if nature itself was celebrating their wonderful news. The roses appeared more vibrant, the grass greener, the sky a more brilliant shade of blue. William pulled back slightly to look at his wife's face, memorizing every detail of this precious moment. "George, Charlotte, and Louis are going to be over the moon," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "They've been asking for a baby brother or sister for months now." Catherine giggled, wiping away her happy tears with the back of her hand. "Remember how excited Charlotte was when we told her about Louis? She insisted on helping choose his nursery colors and wanted to read him stories every night before he was even born." The memory brought fresh smiles to both their faces. Their daughter's maternal instincts had shown themselves early, and she had taken her role as big sister very seriously. George, too, had embraced his position as the protective older brother, always looking out for his younger siblings. "When should we tell the children?" Catherine asked, already imagining their excited faces and endless questions about the new baby. "And when will we make the official announcement?" William considered this carefully. As future king, every aspect of their personal news would eventually become public, but for now, they wanted to savor these precious private moments as a family. "Let's tell the children this evening after their lessons. We can have a family meeting in the drawing room. Make it special for them." Catherine nodded in agreement, her hand still resting protectively over her stomach. "And the public announcement?" she asked, knowing that the palace communications team would need time to prepare for the media frenzy that would surely follow. "In a few weeks, once we've told our families and close friends," William replied thoughtfully. "We'll want to share the news with your parents and my father first. Give everyone a chance to celebrate privately before the world knows." That evening, the Wales family gathered in their cozy private drawing room, a space filled with comfortable sofas, family photographs, and the children's artwork displayed proudly on the walls. George, at 10 years old, sat straight-backed like the future king he would one day become, while 9-year-old Charlotte curled up beside her mother with her favorite stuffed animal. 6-year-old Louis bounced excitedly on his father's lap, full of energy despite the day's activities. "We have something very special to tell you all," Catherine began, her voice warm with love as she looked at each of her precious children. The evening light filtered through the curtains, creating a golden atmosphere that made everything feel magical and intimate. George immediately perked up, his serious expression melting into curiosity. "Is it about our summer holiday to Scotland?" he asked hopefully. The family had been planning their annual trip to Balmoral, and the children were eagerly anticipating weeks of freedom in the Scottish countryside. Charlotte giggled and shook her head at her brother. "No, silly. Mama has that special glow she gets when something really wonderful is happening. Even at 9, Charlotte possessed an intuitive understanding of emotions that often surprised the adults around her. Louis stopped bouncing and turned to face his parents, his bright eyes wide with anticipation. "Are we getting a puppy?" he asked with the directness that only a 6-year-old could manage. The family had been discussing the possibility of adding a furry friend to their household. William and Catherine exchanged amused glances before William cleared his throat. "It's something even more wonderful than a puppy, Lou," he said gently, using his youngest son's favorite nickname. "You're all going to be big brothers and sister again." The room fell silent for exactly 3 seconds before chaos erupted in the most beautiful way. Charlotte squealed with delight, jumping up from the sofa and clapping her hands together. George's face broke into the biggest smile his parents had seen in weeks, and Louis practically launched himself at his mother, wrapping his little arms around her neck. "Really? Truly?" Charlotte asked, bouncing on her toes with excitement. "There's really going to be another baby?" Her eyes were bright with tears of joy, and she pressed her hands to her heart dramatically. Catherine nodded, pulling all 3 children closer to her on the large sofa. "Really, truly. The baby will arrive next spring, just when the flowers start blooming in our gardens again." She smoothed Charlotte's hair back from her face, marveling at how grown up her daughter was becoming. George, ever the thoughtful older brother, immediately began planning. "We'll need to prepare the nursery again, and I can teach the baby about football and rugby when they're older." His sense of responsibility was already kicking in, a trait that would serve him well in his future role. Louis, still the baby of the family for now, seemed to consider this development carefully. "Will the baby be smaller than me?" he asked seriously, as if this was the most important question in the world. "Much smaller," William assured him with a laugh. "Remember how tiny you were when you were born? We have pictures of you fitting perfectly in my hands." Charlotte was already making plans of her own. "I can help choose the baby's clothes and read stories, and show them how to be proper at tea time." Her motherly instincts were already in full force, just as they had been with Louis. The family spent the next hour talking excitedly about the new addition, sharing hopes and dreams for their growing household. The children asked dozens of questions. When would the baby arrive? Would it be a boy or girl? Where would the baby sleep? And most importantly, what would they name their new sibling? As bedtime approached, none of the children wanted to leave their parents' side. This news had made them all feel even more connected as a family, more aware of the special bond they shared. Even George, who usually prided himself on being independent, lingered for extra hugs and kisses. The following weekend, Kensington Palace buzzed with quiet excitement as family members began arriving for a special private luncheon. King Charles was the first to arrive, his face lighting up with grandfatherly joy when William and Catherine shared their wonderful news. His embrace with Catherine was particularly warm, and she could see the happiness shining in his eyes. "Another grandchild," he said softly, his voice filled with emotion. "The children bring such light to our lives, especially during challenging times." He placed a protective hand on Catherine's shoulder, already thinking about how this new addition would bring fresh energy to the royal family. Queen Camilla arrived shortly after, bringing with her a beautiful bouquet of flowers from her own garden. Her genuine excitement was infectious, and she immediately began sharing stories about her own experiences as a grandmother. The two women had grown remarkably close over the years, and Catherine valued Camilla's wisdom and support. Catherine's parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, were the next to receive the news. Carol's reaction was exactly what Catherine had expected. Immediate tears of joy followed by endless questions about Catherine's health and well-being. Michael, typically more reserved, simply pulled his daughter into a long, loving hug that said everything words could not. 4 grandchildren, Carol marveled, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "I can hardly believe how blessed we are." She had always dreamed of a large, close-knit family, and watching her daughter create exactly that filled her heart with pride. The extended family gathering continued throughout the afternoon, with Pippa and James Middleton joining the celebration. Pippa, now a mother herself, offered practical advice and genuine excitement about having another cousin for her own children to play with. The palace gardens provided the perfect backdrop for their private celebration, away from prying eyes and cameras. As the family shared stories and laughter over afternoon tea, Catherine reflected on how different this pregnancy felt from her previous ones. The public pressure seemed less intense somehow, perhaps because they had learned to protect their private moments more carefully. William's hand found hers under the table, a gentle reminder of their united strength. The children, who had been bursting with the secret since the previous evening, finally had permission to share their excitement with their grandparents and aunts. Charlotte immediately appointed herself as the family spokesperson, dramatically announcing to everyone who would listen that she was going to be the best big sister in the entire world. George, meanwhile, had taken his grandfather aside for a serious conversation about his future responsibilities as the eldest grandchild. Even at 10, he understood the weight of his position, but today he seemed more focused on the joy of welcoming another family member than on royal duties. Louis entertained everyone with his enthusiastic plans for teaching the new baby important skills like football, proper chocolate digestive dunking technique, and how to make the best silly faces. His innocent excitement brought laughter and lightness to every conversation. As the afternoon wore on, the family discussed practical matters like adjusting holiday plans and preparing for the increased security that would come with another royal baby. But these logistics felt minor compared to the overwhelming joy that filled every room of the palace. King Charles spent considerable time with William, discussing the balance between public duties and family life. As someone who had navigated similar challenges, he offered valuable perspective on maintaining privacy during such special times. His support meant everything to the young family. The conversation naturally turned to the upcoming official announcement, scheduled for the following month. The palace communications team had already begun preparing for the media response. Knowing that news of a fourth royal baby would capture global attention, Catherine found herself surrounded by the women of the family, all sharing advice, stories, and excited plans for the months ahead. The support system that had carried her through her previous pregnancies was already rallying around her once again, stronger than ever. 3 weeks later, the palace communications team gathered in the elegant briefing room to finalize preparations for the official announcement. The head of communications, Sarah Martinez, had worked with the royal family for over a decade and understood the delicate balance between sharing joyful news and maintaining appropriate privacy. "The timing feels perfect," Sarah explained to her team as they reviewed the carefully crafted statement. "The family has had time to process privately, and the public will appreciate sharing in their happiness." The announcement would be released simultaneously across all official royal social media platforms and to major news outlets worldwide. Meanwhile, Catherine was attending her regular prenatal appointment with Dr. Harrison, the trusted physician who had guided her through all her previous pregnancies. The appointment went perfectly, with the baby showing strong vital signs and Catherine experiencing a typically healthy pregnancy progression. "Everything looks wonderful, Your Royal Highness," Dr. Harrison confirmed with a warm smile. "The baby is developing beautifully, and your health indicators are all excellent." Catherine felt a wave of relief and gratitude, remembering the morning sickness challenges of her earlier pregnancies. That evening, William and Catherine sat together in their private study, reviewing the final version of the announcement that would soon change their lives once again. The statement was simple, elegant, and heartfelt, exactly the tone they wanted to strike with the world. "Their Royal Highnesses the Prince and Princess of Wales are delighted to announce that the Princess of Wales is expecting their fourth child," William read aloud. "The princess is in good health, and the family asks for privacy during this special time." The words captured their joy while establishing appropriate boundaries. The children had been briefed about what would happen once the news became public. They understood that there would be increased attention from photographers and reporters, but they had experienced this before and knew how to handle it with grace and dignity. Charlotte had already begun a secret project, designing welcome cards for the new baby with elaborate drawings of the family and their pets. Her artistic talents were blossoming, and she poured her excitement into colorful creations that would one day become treasured keepsakes. George had taken a more practical approach, researching child development books from the palace library to better understand what to expect from a newborn. His responsible nature was evident in everything he did, even his preparation for big brotherhood. Louis, ever the entertainer, had been practicing his gentlest voice and softest movements, determined to be the perfect gentle giant when the baby arrived. His natural exuberance was being channeled into protective instincts that touched everyone who witnessed them. The palace staff had also begun quiet preparations, ensuring that security protocols were updated and that the household could accommodate the needs of a growing family. Every detail was considered, from nursery preparations to adjusting the children's schedules. Catherine found herself feeling remarkably calm as the announcement date approached. Unlike her previous pregnancies, which had been accompanied by intense public speculation and pressure, this time felt more controlled and peaceful. Perhaps it was experience, or perhaps it was the solid foundation they had built as a family. The night before the announcement, the family enjoyed a quiet dinner together in their private dining room. The children were bubbling with excitement about finally being able to share their wonderful secret with friends and teachers. The anticipation was almost tangible, but it was a happy, hopeful kind of energy. William raised his glass of sparkling water in a toast to Catherine and their growing family. "To new beginnings, continued love, and the blessing of another little Wales joining our adventure," he said with emotion in his voice. As they prepared for bed that evening, Catherine placed her hand on her stomach and whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. Tomorrow the world would share in their joy, but tonight, this perfect moment belonged entirely to them. The morning of the announcement dawned bright and clear, with autumn sunlight streaming through the palace windows like a blessing from above. At exactly 9 o'clock London time, the official statement was released across all royal communication channels, and within minutes the news had spread around the globe like wildfire. Sarah Martinez watched from the communications center as social media exploded with congratulations, well wishes, and expressions of joy from people in every corner of the Commonwealth and beyond. The hashtag #DrostRoyalBaby4 began trending worldwide. Within the first hour, accompanied by thousands of heart emojis and celebration messages, major news networks interrupted their regular programming to share the wonderful announcement. BBC News led with the story, featuring royal correspondents discussing the significance of the news and sharing footage of the family's previous public appearances. CNN, Sky News, and international outlets quickly followed suit. Catherine's phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends, charities she patronized, and fellow parents from the children's school. The outpouring of love and support was overwhelming in the most beautiful way. Even celebrities and world leaders took time to send congratulatory messages through official channels. The children experienced their first taste of the global response when they arrived at school that morning. Their classmates and teachers were buzzing with excitement, though the school administration had prepared well to maintain normalcy while acknowledging the special news. George handled the attention with remarkable maturity, while Charlotte beamed with pride at being able to finally share her excitement. Prince Louis, in his reception class, became the center of attention during morning circle time, when his teacher gently asked if he wanted to share any special news. His enthusiastic "My mama has a baby in her tummy" brought smiles and applause from his little classmates. Meanwhile, Catherine attended a previously scheduled engagement at a children's hospital, where the news added an extra layer of joy to her visit. The young patients were thrilled to congratulate her personally, and several asked if they could draw pictures for the new baby. Their innocent excitement and genuine happiness touched her heart deeply. The medical staff at the hospital shared their professional congratulations, with several pediatric nurses offering gentle advice and sharing their own experiences. Catherine appreciated their expertise and the warm personal connection she felt with these dedicated healthcare workers. William, attending a veterans event across London, found himself answering countless congratulations with genuine warmth and gratitude. The former servicemen and women he was honoring seemed particularly delighted by the news, viewing it as a symbol of hope and continuity for the nation. Back at Kensington Palace, the communications team was working around the clock to manage interview requests, photo opportunities, and official responses. The international interest was enormous, with requests coming from as far away as Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, all Commonwealth nations that felt a special connection to the royal family. King Charles released his own statement expressing his joy at becoming a grandfather for the 13th time. His words were warm and personal, reflecting the close relationship he had developed with his grandchildren and his genuine happiness about the expanding family. The Middleton family also shared their excitement through a carefully worded statement that emphasized their gratitude for the public's kindness and their joy at welcoming another grandchild. Their dignity and grace in handling the attention had always impressed royal watchers. As evening approached, the family gathered again in their private quarters to debrief about their first day as a family of 5 to be in the public eye. The children were excited to share stories about their friends' reactions, and Catherine felt grateful for how smoothly everything had gone. The global response had been overwhelmingly positive, with messages of support coming from world leaders, celebrities, and ordinary families who felt connected to the royal family's journey. This outpouring of love reminded them of the special role they played in bringing joy to people's lives during both ordinary and extraordinary times. 6 months later, on a beautiful spring morning when the palace gardens were in full bloom, Princess Catherine gave birth to a healthy baby daughter. The delivery went smoothly at the private wing of St. Mary's Hospital, the same location where all her children had been born. Prince William was by her side throughout, just as he had been for their previous 3 children. The official announcement came just hours after the birth. Her Royal Highness the Princess of Wales was safely delivered of a daughter at 8:34 this morning. The princess and her daughter are both doing well. The Prince of Wales was present for the birth. The simple statement conveyed the most important information while maintaining the family's preference for privacy during these precious early moments. The new princess weighed 7 pounds, 2 ounces, and had already shown signs of the strong personality that seemed to run in the family. Catherine held her newest daughter close, marveling at her perfect tiny features and feeling overwhelmed with gratitude for this healthy, beautiful addition to their family. George, Charlotte, and Louis were brought to the hospital that afternoon to meet their baby sister for the first time. Their reactions were everything their parents had hoped for and more. Charlotte immediately proclaimed herself the baby's special guardian, while George gently touched his sister's tiny hand with the reverence of someone who understood the miracle of new life. Louis, now 7 and no longer the baby of the family, seemed fascinated by how small his sister was. "She's even tinier than my teddy bear," he whispered in amazement, already demonstrating the gentle protectiveness that would characterize his relationship with his new sister. The couple had chosen the name Princess Alexandra Elizabeth Diana, honoring both sides of their family while creating a unique identity for their daughter. Alexandra, meaning defender of mankind, felt perfect for a little girl who would grow up in a family dedicated to service. Elizabeth honored the late queen, while Diana ensured that William's mother's memory remained a living part of their family story. King Charles visited the hospital that evening, his joy evident as he held his newest granddaughter. The sight of the future king cradling the tiny princess created a touching image of generational continuity that would be treasured by the family forever. His gentle words of welcome to baby Alexandra brought tears to Catherine's eyes. The Middleton grandparents arrived the next morning, with Carol immediately taking charge of practical matters while Michael quietly marveled at his 4th grandchild. Their presence brought comfort and normalcy to the hospital room, creating a warm family atmosphere despite the royal protocol surrounding them. The public response to baby Alexandra's arrival was even more enthusiastic than the pregnancy announcement had been. Thousands of congratulatory messages poured in from around the world, and gifts began arriving at Kensington Palace from well-wishers everywhere. The palace staff worked diligently to acknowledge every thoughtful gesture. 3 days after the birth, the family emerged from the hospital for the traditional photograph on the steps. Catherine looked radiant in a soft blue dress, holding baby Alexandra while William stood proudly beside them. The older children flanked their parents, beaming with pride at their new sister, and clearly excited to finally share her with the world. As they returned to Kensington Palace as a family of 6, Catherine reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. From that quiet morning when William first shared the news of her pregnancy, to this perfect spring day welcoming their daughter, every moment had been a gift. The palace gardens seemed to welcome them home with an extra burst of color. The roses were blooming magnificently, the grass was emerald green, and the ancient trees provided shade and shelter for their growing family. Baby Alexandra would grow up surrounded by this beauty, by siblings who already adored her, and by parents whose love had only grown stronger with each child. That evening, as the family settled into their new routine with baby Alexandra, sleeping peacefully in her nursery, William and Catherine sat together in their sitting room, where the wonderful news had first been shared. They looked out at their gardens, at their children playing happily, and at their newest daughter sleeping safely in her father's arms. "Our family is complete," Catherine whispered softly, and William nodded in agreement. They had been blessed beyond measure, and they knew that their greatest adventures were still ahead of them as they watched their 4 children grow into the remarkable individuals they were destined to become.